This is Jackie Hauser of Flexner Hauser Injury Law. Welcome to our podcast, Laughter in the Law,
where we talk about the law with a lighthearted twist.
Hey, this is Jackie Hauser. I'm an attorney here at Flexner Hauser Injury Law. I'm here today with my wingman, Diane. Say hey, Diane.
Hey, I'm the office manager at Flexner Hauser Injury Law, keeping our office running efficiently and bringing on the smiles.
That's right. And we're here today to talk about the exciting subject of insurance with regard to personal injury law.
Specifically auto insurance.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to stick to the auto policy. I know that if you're like me, whenever you get that policy in the mail, you take it out and you turn off the TV and you turn your phone off and you sit there and read it from cover to cover, just like an owner's manual with a new TV. You just want to know every single thing that insurance policy says. Not.
Right.
Most of us throw it in a pile, throw it in a drawer, and never see it again. Until you happen to have an accident, and then you got to drag it out, or you may have bought your insurance online, so you don't even have anybody to call. I happen to have an agent, so I bug the crap out of him sometimes with questions. But most of us, if we don't have an agent, then we're just stuck. We're just stuck Googling answers and maybe saying, where did I put that policy?
Yeah, I had a flat tire a couple months ago, and you asked, do you have roadside assistance in your insurance policy? And I was like, I don't know. I have no clue.
And then, like, a short time later, you had an accident, and I asked you a question, and you were like, I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess the message is we need to pay attention to our auto insurance policies a bit more, especially two areas that we want to focus on today.
Yeah. This is one of the questions I ask everybody whenever they come in after having an accident. I certainly ask them about the at-fault party and what was their insurance, and we eventually have to do some research to find out what their coverage is. But while I got them here on that first visit, I always ask them, what is your insurance? What is your insurance coverage? And a lot of times they look at me like, well, why is that important? I mean, sometimes they even ask, why is that important? I wasn't at fault. What does my insurance have to do with anything?
I shouldn't have to pay anything.
That's right. I'm not paying a thing. And I'm like, well, let's chat about that. Because just because this other person says they have insurance, number one, they may not have any. So your insurance is going to kick in. But more likely than not, one of these two things apply. More likely than not, your policy may have coverage for medical payments. So medical payments may apply. And then secondly, your policy may have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, where that person that was at fault either didn't have insurance or didn't have enough insurance. And then your policy is going to kick in. And those are really important things. Those are protecting you. That's where you protect you and your family from others. I tell people all the time, I don't sell insurance, but I'm going to tell you, you need to do something with your policy here before you get in another accident. And sometimes it's tragic because, I've had folks come in. I had a girl come in one time in a really bad accident out in the middle of the country, busted her up pretty bad, broke her leg. And the person that hit her had a $30,000 policy. In North Carolina, that's the minimum you can have. It's called a 30/60. And for liability coverage, you have $30,000 per person, $60,000 per accident. So if there had been 4 people in that car, the total that those 4 people could have recovered collectively is $60,000. We would have just had to split it up between them.
Wow.
Fortunately, it was just her in the car, so the most she could recover was $30,000. Well, her broken leg cost more than that. Her medical bills were instantaneously more than $30,000. And we'll get into, there's things that we do and things that we work out about that, but it doesn't make the medical bills completely go away, but we certainly can help reduce medical bills. So then I say, well, let's look at your policy. Since this person had the minimum limits required by North Carolina law, what do you have? And she had 30/60. So at that point, what's she going to recover? $30,000. That's it. She had, a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 claim, and she walked away with $30,000. And it was sad. She had no medical payments. And I see this all the time. I mean, you asked me before we went on the air, did I have any stories? Oh, my gosh. I could talk for hours about the stories. She had no medical payments. She had no excess coverage. And
Well, hold on. When you say she had no medical payments, you're not saying she didn't have medical bills. We're saying she didn't have the coverage of medical payments, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, thank you. Because I get into the lingo and then I forget. She didn't have medical payments coverage. She had plenty of medical bills to pay.
Yes.
Just not the coverage on her policy. And she also didn't have the underinsured motorist coverage, which would have come in on top of that 30 and provided her with additional coverage. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Those two areas today.
Yeah. So you might just want to pull out your auto policy, pull out your deck page. Where did I put that thing? Where is that policy? Pull out that policy and come back and join us, and we'll look at those two things.
Yeah, I think mine is still sealed in the envelope that was mailed to me like 2 months ago.
Oh.
And probably is sitting in the filing cabinet with the last 3 or 4 that have stayed sealed.
It's not a court transcript. You can unseal it. It's not a court transcript. Okay.
All right. So if we're looking at our deck page, what is a deck page?
So whenever you get your policy or whenever you renew every year, you're sent a deck page. It's called a policy declaration. We abbreviate it, just calling it deck page. And or you can go online. 90% of us have it on our phone. We have the app on our phone, and you can just pull it up on your phone and look at your deck page. I'm going to digress just a little bit. I love asking people about their coverage. And I'll say, what is your insurance coverage? And they'll say, oh, I have full coverage. And I'll say, and what does that mean? Because I don't know what that means. I don't know what full coverage means.
What would full coverage mean?
To me, it would mean you have comprehensive and collision and all kinds of bells and whistles.
And the medical payments coverage and the UIM.
Check. But I have found what people mean whenever they say I have full coverage. I think some insurance person has said that phrase to them, which means you've met the minimum in North Carolina for insurance coverage. You've got that whopping 30/60. If anybody hasn't been to the emergency room lately and gotten a bill, you're typically not going to walk out of an ER owing less than about $10,000 or $15,000. And you're not going to you're not going to take an ambulance ride. I'd rather be in a limo. Well, not really, because it depends on if I need medical care. If I need medical care, I want to be in an ambulance.
Right.
But a limo is cheaper than an ambulance. That little 5 or 10 mile ride is going to cost you about $1,500.
Yeah.
So medical payments is something that would be on your deck page. And if you have that coverage, you're going to pay separately for it. It is the cheapest insurance you're ever going to buy. And it's like a bonanza whenever you need it. I brought my deck page today. I know you can't see it, but on my deck page, now I went high on medical payments. So obviously because I'm in this business and I know how much medical bills are. So my medical payments coverage is $25,000 per person. If I have 4 people in my car, everybody's going to get $25,000 worth of coverage in medical payments. We'll talk about what that means in a second. But that costs me a whopping $28 a year.
If I am in your car and we get in an accident and I have up to $25,000 in medical bills, it's only going to cost you $28 a year?
Yes, I'm showing it to her now. $28.
I mean, why wouldn't you do that?
I don't know.
Because think about it. 28 divided by 12 is just a little over $2 a month. Yeah. You're paying for $25,000 per person medical payment coverage.
Yeah, exactly. And medical payments coverage, it doesn't matter whether I'm at fault or not.
Interesting.
Yeah. So even if I'm at fault, I can recover my medical payments coverage.
That makes it even more of a no-brainer to me. Why do you think people don't have medical payments as part of their insurance?
Well, I can only suspect. I think there's 2 big reasons. Number one, folks go online now to buy their insurance, and so they don't have an agent. And so they go online and they're doing the set your price thing on the insurance app or on the insurance.
Yeah.
And so, of course, what do you want to do? You want to brag about, I saved $363 this year on insurance. Well, you saved it because you cut your coverage. That's why you saved. You didn't get better coverage. You got crappy coverage, and you cut out important coverages. I don't want to save $28 a year and lose $25,000 worth of coverage.
Per person.
Per person in my vehicle. Or, well, we'll get to that in a minute. I'm jumping ahead. I'm so excited. The second reason, don't let me forget that point. The second reason is, and this is speculation. I can't say that I know this one-on-one, but what I have heard through the grapevine is that agents don't like to sell medical payments coverage because then when it's used, it looks bad on their bottom line. I don't know if that's accurate. I'm just saying it out there. I'm putting it out in the universe. That's what I've been told. Maybe an insurance agent can reply and tell me otherwise. I'm sure they'll say, "Oh no, Jackie, that's absolutely wrong."
Let's start the debate. We are peeking behind the curtain and seeing if there's a man there.
But that's just what I've been told. They don't like to sell it because then they don't like people to use it.
Yeah.
Right? I can tell you this: if you get in an accident and you report it to your insurance company, nobody's calling you and going, "Oh, hey, Jackie, don't forget you've got that $25,000 in coverage for medical payments. Make sure you use that." Nobody's calling me. Not even my insurance company's calling me and telling me that.
You have to be proactive.
You've got to know what your coverage is, right?
Right.
So, and if I didn't work in this industry, I probably wouldn't be very aware of it either. But I just want to champion that for people. You don't have to have $25,000 per person. I guarantee you, I can almost guarantee you, I don't like using that phrase, but I can almost guarantee you that if you got $5,000 per person, $10,000 per person, it would probably cost you comparable to that per year, $5 to $10 to $20 per year. Now, certainly everybody's insurance is different, and it's based on it. Part of it's based on your credit rating. I don't know how that figures in, but I know part of it's your credit rating. Obviously, a lot of it is your driving history. It's a lot of it is are you paying monthly? Are you paying annually? Those kind of things. So all of that factors into the cost of your insurance coverage. But I just encourage you, next time you're online and you're checking out for your new policy, pop in $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 worth of medical payments coverage and see what it's going to cost you for a year. And you're going to be surprised. And then do like you just did. Divide that by 12 and go, can I pay an extra $2.25 per month for $25,000 worth of coverage?
Per person.
Per person in my car.
Now, I haven't looked at my deck page. I've already confessed to that. But I did reach out to my agent before our podcast today and said, what do I have medical payment coverage and what is it? And I have $2,000, which I think is about average.
That's mostly what folks have. They either have, and it comes in $1,000 increments. So some folks, I have seen it for $500 before. But 5,000, 1,000, 2,005. Some folks have 10. We had a client the other day in a bad accident, had $10,000 in medical coverage. Him and his wife were both in the car. Boom, that was $20,000 right there. I told him, go back and figure out how much you've paid for insurance all your life, and you've probably just got every dollar of that back in your medical payments coverage right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in an accident. I know I have medical payments coverage. How do I then get that from the insurance company? Okay,
I'm going to get there.
Oh, okay.
Because it's really just a matter of contacting your insurance company and telling them, hey, I've been in an accident. And of course, if you hire us, we do that. We do that gratis. We don't charge anybody for helping them get their med pay. Some firms do. Some firms charge. You can charge, and it's by law, you can do that now. You can charge a fee.
Well, because there is some manpower and paperwork. And
oh, yes.
That goes into it. But
anytime you're dealing with an insurance company, there is manpower and paperwork involved. And some folks just don't want to bother with it, and that's fine. We know what we're doing, and so we help people with that. So the the first things that we have to realize, though, and you don't have to realize this if you're a client, but we will certainly educate you on it, is what the policy does cover under medical payments coverage and what it doesn't cover. So there are just a few limitations. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
But there's also some things I think are really important. Number one, like I mentioned before, fault is not an issue. So I could be the driver and have medical payments coverage and still be able to recover for that. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be able to recover for anything else, but I can at least recover my medical payments coverage.
The liable driver.
Right, I could be the liable driver. Okay. Number two, it covers everybody in my car, per person in my car. Number three, though, is important. It covers me if I'm in your car and you don't have medical payments coverage.
Wow.
So I'm riding around with you and your crappy insurance policy.
As my passenger princess.
And I say, hey, Diane, do you have any medical payments coverage? You go, I need to add that. Yes, you do. But you know what? Good for me. I've got $25,000 in coverage. Oh, wait, let's play it again. Let's play a different scenario. I say, hey, Diane, do you have medical payments coverage? And you say, why, yes, I do. I have $10,000 in coverage. I say, great. I'm going to use that. And look, I'm also going to use my 25.
Yeah. Because if you have up to that much.
Obviously, it has to be for the medical expenses. I'm not. Yes. It's not. They're not just sending me a check. I've got to have medical expenses for that. But my little girl with a broken leg, it just takes one broken leg.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it just takes one rotator cuff tear.
Wow.
I mean, I'm telling you, it doesn't take a lot anymore to amass that much in bills. So it covers you as a driver. It covers everybody in your car. It covers you when you're in someone else's car. It covers you as a pedestrian, which in Wilmington is very important. Because we seem to pick off our pedestrians sometimes. So it covers you as a pedestrian as well. Just like the limitations, though, are important as well. It only covers reasonable, your policy will say reasonable medical expenses. Now, it doesn't list what would be unreasonable ad nauseum, but it does list a few that are not considered reasonable. And I'll give you another example. Acupuncture is typically, it's specifically set out in most policies that acupuncture or similar treatment is typically not covered.
I think we had someone that tried to get reimbursed for massages from their cousin.
Right. Yeah. Your cousin who's a massage therapist, that's not covered. Reflexology, that's going to be questionable, so that kind of thing. But chiropractic is covered. TENS units, if a TENS unit has been ordered by a physician, that's covered.
What is a TENS unit?
A TENS unit is something you use for like muscular pain. You put it on your body and it kind of helps with, it's just an external device instead of taking a pill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So typically what they're going to look for to not have to go through the long litany of exclusions would be, is it something that's provided by a licensed medical provider or something associated with their practice for a bodily injury? If so, then, and a lot of times there's these codes. We want to make sure that it can be coded correctly. That's all internal. I'm not going to go into those deep weeds. But if so, then it typically can be included in the reasonable medical expenses and covered under MedPay. Just like in any personal injury claim, there's a 3-year statute of limitations. So that's a good and bad thing. Number one, you can get treatment for 3 years and know that it's going to be covered under this MedPay claim. And so you don't have to rush out and get all of your treatment, although usually most of your treatment is at the beginning. But you may have some type of chronic issue where you have to continue getting treatment, and you know that it's going to be covered under your medical payments coverage. And so those are the big things. I mean, the big thing is it has to be a reasonable medical expense that's rendered by some type of licensed medical provider. So
you either we on behalf of our clients, or if someone was doing this on their own, they would have to provide a medical bill from a provider that's approved. Or
right. Just to there are some exclusions though, and these are set out in your insurance policy as well. I promise you they are. It's great reading, but just to kind of highlight them, I'm not going to talk about all the exclusions for MedPay. The biggest exclusion that has come along in the past decade is Uber. If you're an Uber driver, if you run a quote livery service where you're delivering things, then that's not included. Now,
what do you mean it's not included for medical payments?
It's not included. It doesn't. They don't provide medical payments coverage for the insured. Now, if I'm in an Uber vehicle and get in an accident, then yes, I'm a passenger and I can pay.
But if you are the Uber driver,
but if I'm using my car as an Uber, no, I'm excluded. And that's because Uber and what's the other one? Uber and Lyft.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's because now Uber and Lyft have their own policies. And so, and you know, there's no way to tell whenever you get into that little car whether or not that person has an insurance policy or not. But if they're responsible, they will have their own Uber policy. And usually those do have MedPay as well. They've got a small MedPay coverage, like $1,000, $2,000 on them, and they usually have a very good bodily injury. If you have the Uber policy, usually it's a good bodily injury policy as well. So, but if you're an Uber driver and you haven't bought the Uber policy, or if you're a Lyft driver and haven't bought the Lyft policy, then yeah, you're not going to be able to recover under your personal policies. Your personal auto policies, MedPay coverage. You're excluded from that.
Because you're, quote, on the job.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. All right,
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Another exclusion is if you're using your vehicle as a residence.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, but if you're occupying a vehicle as a residence, now that could be you're living out of your car, or it could be you're living in an RV. You know, and so, but if it's your residence, then that's an exclusion for that. I'm pretty sure, and I haven't really come across that scenario, but I'm pretty sure there's a separate policy you can purchase for that.
Okay.
Through RV insurance and stuff. The other big exclusion, and we run into this a lot with MedPay, is more so than others. This is one of those situations where you're like, oh, sorry, but if you're actually occupying a vehicle and you're struck by another vehicle on the policy, think about it. Think about how many times people back into one of their cars in their driveway.
Oh.
Think about how many times, you know, you're moving cars around in the yard and somebody's pulling in and you're pulling out and boom, it happens more than you think. And so that is a limitation. You can't be struck by another vehicle on your policy and recover for medical payments coverage. You also can't recover for any of your UM or UIM as well, or bodily injury coverage as well. That's an exclusion there. Those are the big exclusions. There's also some exclusions that you can't recover for medical payments coverage as a result of a war or a declaration of war or civil war or insurrection or rebellion or revolution. So obviously there's others. But that's just some interesting reading from your policy about medical payments coverage. I'm telling you, it is the cheapest and best insurance you will ever buy in the thing that we ride around in every day. We get into this dangerous weapon every day and propel ourselves at 50, 60, 75, 80 miles an hour.
And trust that people will keep their distance while we're doing it.
And nothing bad will happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just really encourage people every time I meet with them every day, get medical payments coverage. It's really going to pay off. Especially
if you have a family. I mean, you want to protect your kids and your loved ones. Especially, you know, if there are multiple people riding in a car consistently. I'm thinking about like soccer moms that carpool and things like that. You need to have that coverage to be able to protect those extra bodies in the car.
Absolutely. I mean, and once again, for the cost, it's cheaper than one cup of coffee a month. Even if you get the highest. And I don't even know what the highest amount is. I stopped at 25. I got one more story for you about MedPay, and then we'll call this. This wasn't my case, but I remember probably 10 or 12 years ago, one of our friends, their son was in a bad accident, and he was airlifted literally from the scene. to Chapel Hill with a head injury, and it was bad. And I was talking to him a few months later. The son recovered, did great. He's now doing fabulous. No repercussions from it. But obviously that day, the concern was a traumatic brain injury, and they were getting him care as soon as they could. Well, that life flight from a scene to a hospital is about $60,000.
Shoo!
Yeah. Hasn't gone down in price. It still runs about that amount right now. So that's a very expensive helicopter ride, but it saves your life. Well, they had MedPay coverage that paid every bit of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, they also had health insurance. So health insurance paid the bill. It may have been reduced a little bit, but then they had MedPay coverage, and that was basically money they were able to put in their pocket for these reasonable, necessary medical expenses because their health insurance had covered. It wasn't a policy where they had to reimburse the health insurance, and so they were able to put that money in their pocket.
Doesn't happen very often, though, right?
Well, if it depends on the health insurance, and that gets us to another topic for another day.
Yeah.
But if your health insurance, like if you have a policy off the marketplace, you don't have to reimburse marketplace policies. If you have Medicare or Medicaid, we do have to reimburse them, but we usually negotiate that for you. And so you still put some money in your pocket from your medical payments coverage. You've paid for the insurance, both health insurance as well as auto insurance. And so, it's one of those times where that's what medical payments was designed for, was to put money in your pocket as quickly as possible for these bills that are coming in.
Yeah.
That was the whole purpose in that. And so, I've seen it work good things like that case. And then I've seen it where people just didn't have it and we're in quite a pickle.
And just one last thought. You mentioned Medicare. Sometimes that does slow down medical payment coverage. You getting your check from your medical payments coverage. Sometimes that slows it down, right?
Right, because the insurance company is going to pay for those reasonable, necessary medical expenses, but they want to know what the final number is.
Okay.
And so
a scenario would be like you have a $1,000 hospital bill, but maybe they've taken $400 off, adjusted it down to $600. Mm-hmm.
So let's say, so in that scenario, let's say that you got we'll just use round numbers. So let's say you got a $1,000 hospital bill, and let's say you got $1,000 in MedPay coverage. So, but you also are a Medicare recipient. So your auto insurance is going to wait and see what Medicare pays. So if Medicare pays $600 and then adjusts off $400, your bill went from $1,000 minus $4 down to $6. So you'll recover $600 from your medical payments coverage. Now, what we would do then is we would negotiate with Medicare how much do we have to pay them back. Maybe we have to pay them back $200. And so you would have a balance of $400 that you could recover from the medical payments coverage.
Why wouldn't the insurance company look at the $1,000 original bill instead of the adjustments? Because
what they do, there's a new rule in North Carolina, and I say new, it's like probably 10 or 15 years old, but there's a new rule in North Carolina about the insurance company only has to take into effect or take into account what's been incurred. Now, does that apply to medical payments coverage? Some of us argue no, it does not, but that's a fight for another day. Nobody has wanted to pay me yet to file that suit and take that on, because that would not be a contingency case. That would be an hourly case. But that's why, so they are only going to pay what's been incurred. And if there's an adjustment off the bill, they say that was not an incurred bill. So the incurred bill, even though it was $1,000, Medicare was able to negotiate or adjust off $400. The incurred bill was the $600.
Well, I hope we've made it very clear that medical payments coverage is absolutely necessary to make sure that you need to make sure is in your auto insurance policy. Yeah,
go and either talk to your agent or go online and just run some numbers. I just don't believe that once you. Let me make that a positive statement. I believe once you see how cheap it is to get that coverage, and hopefully with the knowledge we've given you today, that you'll say, like I just said at the beginning, it's the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy.
Yeah. Okay, so that's MedPay coverage. Let's now talk about underinsured motorist coverage.
Yeah, that's exciting too. Once again, another insurance that's pretty cheap, and I think it's something everybody needs. And thanks for joining in for Flexner Hauser Injury Law, Laughter in the Law,
where we talk about the law with a lighthearted twist.